Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges, and joining me today, we've got the SwimSwam crew. We are joined by SwimSwam co-founder, editor-in-chief Braden Keith, and SwimSwam senior reporter, Jared Anderson. And today, we're talking trials. We're going to break down all the exciting races, who to watch, both to make the team and maybe not to make the team. But we're giving you our hot takes on the 2021 U.S. Olympic Trials Wave 2. So first of all, let's get started with what race you are most excited for, looking forward to. Braden, let's start with you.
I mean, in a pool like this, there is no race that I am not looking forward to. I think the only answer to this question is the men's 200 IM. There are so many storylines. If Lochte makes the team, it's the story of the year. If Michael Andrew makes the team, it's a big story. If Carson Foster makes the team, it's a big story. Michael Andrew is going to have a big lead at 150 meters. Everybody's going to be trying to chase him down. It's going to be visually a really fun race to watch, I think. And there's just so many storylines in there that I don't think there's any other answer to that question.
Jared, what are you thinking about the men's 200 IM? And I mean, hearing you say that, all their different race plans, I mean, it's going to be like the mixed medley relay, right? Especially with Michael in there, just like way out in the lead and then see who can catch him. Jared, what are you thinking about the men's 200 IM and the favorites in that race?
Right. I mean, you nailed it. I think Michael Andrew kind of makes that a pretty exciting race to watch because you know he's going to be out fast at the 150, and we don't really know how he's going to come back, but he's been doing pretty well at it lately. So, a lot of contenders in that race. I mean, you're kind of, you have like the old guard with Lochte, and you even have Kalish, who's kind of established and has had a lot of success there, but we don't really know where he's at, as recently as we've seen guys like Michael Andrew swim. So kind of a lot of unknowns. We're going to learn a lot.
I mean, Michael Andrew will be ahead of the world record line at 150 meters. That's like a guarantee. He might be several body lengths ahead of the world record line at 150 meters. And if he's figured out how to breathe on his freestyle, he could break the world record, which would just be, I mean, all the years and mountains of crap that he has taken in his career. If he showed up at trials and broke the world record in the 200 IM, it would just be like, I know we don't have rooting interest, but it would just be such the ultimate clapback against everybody who has talked crap about him for the last 8 years. It would just make me really happy.
Do we know what Lochte's free split was in that 154.00?
No.
My guess is 28, but I have no idea, to be honest.
I mean, he's not a great closer either, right? We know he was beat by Yu Shai Wen in the 400 IM closing, and so like it's not like he's a fantastic closer in the IM.
So a few questions about this men's 200 IM race. Does Shane Casas swim it?
I hope so.
So, I mean, because it's a direct conflict with the 200 back, right? And we've seen Lochte do the double before with pretty good results, but again, not reaching top potential in either event for the most part. So
I think he should do the 200 back. Like, I think that should be his focus.
Yeah.
But I think he's very confident in himself. And I think his coaches are very confident in him. And so, between him and Jay and Jason Kalanog, I'm not sure who's going to be the one that's going to say, I don't think we can do both of these. I think they're all going to look at each other and say, I think we can do them both. Maybe he'll start with both and not finish with both is a possible scenario. I think if he's going to choose, I think he should do the 200 back personally in long course. I think his breaststroke will be, he thinks he's a very good breaststroker. We haven't necessarily seen that yet. His people say he's a very good breaststroker too, but in long course, that'll show up a little bit more, I think.
Well, I always just wonder how much the first Olympic team weighs on you as a swimmer, because it's a lot easier to take that double when you're locked in, you've been to the Olympics, and you have that on your resume. I just see it such a culminating thing to make the Olympic team. So, like you said, he's a pretty confident guy, so he may go for it, but I would have trouble, I think, trying to stack it up too much before I've just gotten on the team in something.
Mm-hmm. And I think that'll be interesting too, because he's entered in like 6 or 7 events, but he's going to go for the 100 back. And so it's like, I think it depends a lot on if he makes the team early in the meet versus if he doesn't, and how that kind of affects his decision. It'll be interesting.
That gives him 2 races. If he makes the 100 back, that gives him 2 races already, not just 1.
Yeah, that's true.
At the games. Yeah.
Do you see any rising stars or anyone that might not necessarily be on anyone's radar in the men's 200 IM that you think might make some noise?
I think, what's his face from Mississippi? Sam Stewart, is that the right name?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that he is flying under a lot of radars, and he had a really good swim last year going into COVID, and he would be on the tip of everybody's tongue if COVID hadn't happened. And he's being kind of brushed off for the Seliskars and the Abram Devines and all those other guys that haven't really done as much in this event lately. And I don't kind of understand why he's being pushed to the side of this conversation. He's not really a young riser per se. I don't know if there's much room for somebody who's going to 201 right now to really get into this final, but I think people are glazing over him. And he had all the momentum in the world going in. And if we're honest about it, training in Mississippi, his life was probably not as disrupted as a lot of swimmers' lives were during the pandemic. So there's no reason to believe that momentum should have appreciably impacted in any way.
He was a Texas Longhorn, swam in college there, and then now training in Mississippi. I know it's Summer Nationals in 2019. I think that was it. He had a great meet. Yeah. And like you said, he had a lot of momentum going forward. I feel like he's not on people's radars because he hasn't had that breakout swim or made a big team yet. And so a lot of people haven't seen his times or registered them as like, oh, wow, that's as having momentum. That's a good point. Jared, do you see anyone in this race who could surprise?
Maybe it's front of mind because I've been doing these recruit ranks of our sophomores, but there's one of the youngest guys out there. I think he's 16. Will Modglin is going to be one of the top sophomores. He's not a guy that's going to make the Olympic team probably here, but a guy you could see. I wonder maybe if he had a big drop and made a semifinal, and you'd be seeing him, I guess, 3 years down the road. I wanted to say 4, but in this weird year. So yeah, he'd be an interesting one. I mean, I think Seliskar is probably a guy that is probably not a dark horse necessarily, but we don't think of him as a 200 IMer as much as we should maybe.
And I think for Seliskar, it's interesting because we saw him have these huge long course times when he was a high schooler, and then we saw him have huge short course swims in the NCAA at Cal. And we haven't seen that translate to long course necessarily yet, maybe besides his 200 freestyle. And so when we see him swim his other events, shaved, tapered, ready to go, I think he has maybe more potential to throw down some eye-popping times than
he did go a best time in Des Moines, that last pro swim before COVID. He won a best time in the 200 IM and long course. So maybe he was just getting it figured back out again, and then we know what happens.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, that's a good answer of like, all right, this could be a little bit more surprising than other swimmers. All right. So Jared, your race you're most excited to see at Olympic Trials Wave 2.
Good luck.
For sure. I kind of want to cheat on this question and say both of the 100 freestyles a little bit, which is very much cheating, but I think the men's 100 free especially, I know that's a big one people are looking forward to. That field is so deep. So I think what's cool about that race is all 3 rounds are going to be really, really good.
We're going to have storylines coming up. It's not as deep as it could have been because there's 3 of the top 10 seeds that are not swimming
it. Bobby Howard, Tate Jackson,
and Jack Conger, who is entered in the meet still, but is not entered in the 100 free.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is, and it thins the race out. It would be a brutal race with those three guys in there. And I suppose maybe there's a reason they're, choosing to focus on some other things, or at least in Conger's case. But, God, I mean, that the semifinal might be the race for that event, is just who makes it into the top 8. And I think the final might underwhelm a little bit just because you don't want to be last. You don't want to go out too fast and be last. So I think it could be kind of a tactical, strategic kind of race. But then again, you still have Dressel in there who could always do something historic. So kind of every round of that race, you're going to have something to watch for.
Have you guys ever talked to Mel about the finals of the 100 and 200 free at the Olympic trials? I can't repeat exactly how he describes it, but in his mind, when you make that final and you just have to show up and not be one of those last two guys, he has a certain way of describing the guys and their mentality who can't just avoid being the last two. And I've always thought, the first time he described that to me, because obviously he's known as a butterflyer, but he did make the 800 free relays at the Olympics. And that's always kind of stuck with me that, once you make the final, obviously if you're the 8th qualifier, you're probably not going to beat Dressel, but there's always a swimmer who shows up in that final and just disappears. And so if you're not that swimmer, you're almost on the Olympic team. If you just aren't that one swimmer who shows up in the final and falls apart and loses it and is behind everybody. And that's always kind of stuck with me, his description, even though I can't repeat it.
For sure. I mean, I've heard Nathan Adrian, I think, describe it as kind of like the 100 free, you're just going out almost on a razor's edge. Like if you're a little too fast, you're going to drop, you're going to fall off in the back half. And if you're a little too slow, it's so hard to run anybody down. So you're for sure going to have a guy or two in that heat that just gets a little excited, goes out too fast. And it'll just be kind of heartbreaking to see who it is probably. But like I said, that makes the semifinal really, really fun, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I have to ask, for this 100 free final, we've previewed it and our commenters have gone crazy with their predictions of like, oh, it's going to take 47 to get to 6th or 8th, and which I don't think is the case. But what do you think the 6th place finishing time will be? What will it take to make the team?
I think I really want to do this article, and I'm probably going to do it between the Olympic trials and the Olympic Games, but Americans drastically overestimate the Olympic trials. There are not many world records broken at the Olympic trials. Swimmers always get faster from the trials to the games. Getting 3rd place at the Olympic trials is not harder than getting 3rd place at the Olympic Games. That hasn't been true for 40 years. So we have all these tropes that people say. So I don't think it's going to take a 47 to make the team. I think a 48, because there's kind of a gap you can see in the rankings, especially without Bobby Howard and Tate Jackson and those guys. There's a pretty clear cutoff point.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's going to be like a 48-2 will make the team.
Yeah. And actually I'm looking at the psych sheet. Nathan Adrian is 7th at 48-1. And then Danny Kruger is 8th at 48-5.
And he could totally go a 48-1. I don't think a 48-1 for Daniel Kruger would surprise anybody in some round. Who knows which round? But
I think I think one thing there is all these guys could, right? But not all of them will. And I think the mistake is that everyone's like, well, all of them will, right? Because they all could. But as you said, most of the time, 80% of them don't, and then 20% do.
Right.
Jared, what do you think?
Yeah, 48 mid probably popped into my head, 48-4, something like that. I'm curious, could it be faster? I don't know. Is it going to take a tougher time to get into that top 8 out of the semis than it takes to get on the Olympic team in 6th in the final? I wonder how. I'd have to look back at past years, I guess, but I wonder if that'll be kind of a line that we try and compare.
I bet it'll be close. I think it'll be real close. That's a good point.
Yeah, because I mean, especially because Braden, as you were describing it, it's like you always have one guy who disappears in the final, right? And semis you're trying to be 8 guys, whereas finals you're trying to be 2. Um, so that's a really interesting point. I was going to say 48-4 as well. I mean, I think it'll be fast, but not, I think we might see 3 47s in the final heat.
47s are still hard. I think people aren't giving 47. It's not like when Hogan Bond had the record at 48-9 or 47-9 for all those years. And then it felt like the floodgates opened a little bit, but going sub 48 is still a hard thing to do.
Yeah, and especially under that amount of pressure when you're trying to make the Olympic team for a lot of these guys for the first time. So men's 100 free, my race that I'm excited for, I would say the women's 100 free too, but I really want to talk about the women's 100 fly because we have 2 high schoolers as our 2 top seeds. We have Kelsey Dahlia, who, was the favorite, I think, a year ago, is 3rd seed. And then Katie McLaughlin, Reagan Smith, Kate Douglas, Gretchen Walsh, Ali Tetzlaff, Lily Norman, all at 57-9 or better. I mean, I think it's the top 2 might seem kind of obvious, but again, they're 2 high schoolers who have competed at World Junior Championships, but I don't think either of them has been to trials.
I don't think so. Claire certainly has not. Claire has not, because she's 16 and we'd remember if she was at 12. I don't remember Tori. I think I'm a big Kelsey Dahlia fan, and I think I know the wisdom is we've got these 2 young high schoolers. They've got all the momentum. Let's put them on the team now. I think we need to remember that Louisville has lulled us to sleep before as a program. And at this meet, they've got 2 swimmers, Mallory Comerford and Kelsey Dahlia, who aren't getting a lot of love. And we see it at the collegiate level. We've seen it at the post-grad level. They lull people to sleep, and then they show up at the big meet and they win titles. And so I'm not ready to call it a 2-swimmer race yet. I think it's a great story. I think probably Tori Husky and Claire Curzon will both make the team in something. But I think Kelsey Dahlia is going to have one more shot in her. And they're going to, I think she's got enough that if either Tori or Claire doesn't show up, Kelsey will take a spot for sure. I think both those young swimmers are going to have to go best times if they want to make the team.
Well, Braden, I'm glad you jumped in on the Dahlia defense, because I think I have to play devil's advocate here and bring up Dahlia. She had a really good ISL season too. It's not like she's really lost a step or anything like that. So it kind of feels like
as a pro at her age, she doesn't need to prove as much in season. She knows where she's at. She knows where she needs to be. These young swimmers are age groupers, so they drop time like age groupers, and we all get excited about that. But age groupers also miss their tapers. I mean, these things, young swimmers are unpredictable, and she knows where she needs to be. She's adjusting. She wasn't out of the water too long, so.
Yeah, and to me, if she doesn't make the team in this, it won't be because she went backwards. I think it'll be because those 2 just really had a huge year and went by her. I think all 3 should be really, really fast.
Yeah, I'm actually in agreement with you guys. Like, I think if I was going to put money on it, I think I would bet for Dahlia and Comerford for that matter, because Dahlia's made the team, right? She's done it before. She knows what to expect in that final. And between 2 high school, 2 age groupers, I think one of them might not go best time, right? Might not. I think you said it great. They would both have to go best times to make the team. And if they do, that'd be a great story. And if not, then we'll see. And then, I mean, you've got I'm just really curious how Reagan Smith fits in there too. Because she's going to have 3 other individuals, but also like her fly is been coming on the last year and a half so strong. It's like, can she get in the mix there?
Yeah, well, and she's got the 100 back on that night as well. But I think that is probably the most doable double that anyone could do. Probably we see a lot of people go 100 fly, 100 back at NCAAs all the time. It's a pretty common thing. And then it's like, I just looked it up. 100 fly final, I believe, starts the session. 100 back semi is the very last event of the session. So maximum time you can have for like a 2-event session. And
that's the order she'd want those races in. That's the order that she would want those races in. Because she'll make the 100 back final after the 100 fly final, no problem, I would think.
Yeah, and again, for me, I feel like the only question then is how much does she put the weight on, like making that first Olympic team before you jump into events? But I think she'll wind up doing both.
I kind of don't. I think I'd see her doing the 200 fly. They've always been a little conservative with her. They've always been a little protective with her. And I think I could see them saying, by them, I mean her parents or coaches, all the people involved in this decision making, saying, you know what, Reagan, this is going to be your first Olympic Games. You don't need to go and swim 6 events in Tokyo. You need to go swim 4 events, try to win 4 medals, and that's a successful meet. And as she's getting older, we don't know if their approach is going to change, but they've always felt a little bit like they don't want to push too far too soon. So I could also see them skipping this one because again, it's not as obvious of an opening. The 200 fly, there's kind of an opening there. The 100 fly with Tori and Claire coming up and filling that gap, it just doesn't feel as obvious.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I think if she's going to skip an event or an event final for scheduling conflicts, I think that would be it. So, I mean, that's going to be a race to watch. We've got a lot of good races. I want to get your quick thoughts on Kathleen Baker's news. She fractured her foot, twisted her ankle in a walking accident. Obviously, that's pretty devastating news for her. She looked really strong coming into the 2020 season, and then again this season in 100 back, 200 back, and 200 IM. And so what are you guys thinking about her chances now with a fractured foot? She has the experience of making the team, of medaling at an Olympics, former world record holder in the 100 back, American record holder in the 200 IM. So she had 3 good shots, but those are all pretty deep fields. So what do you guys think about Kathleen Baker?
You go.
Yeah, well, the hard part is how deep those fields are. I don't think she has a whole lot of room to go backwards. So it doesn't sound to me like the kind of injury that's going to set you back a long ways. But even if it set her back a little bit, that's somewhat concerning to me. I was pretty high on her, I think, making the team in the 200 IM previously, but that's going to get tougher. It's got a lot tougher.
We don't know exactly what the injury is. Feet, a lot of people will tell you that there are some fractured feet that are much worse than other fractured feet. I think it's going to impact her no matter what. But there are foot fractures that I think she made the statement probably because she's going to show up on deck in a boot and she wanted to get out ahead of it. But we saw Bobby Finks here in the NCAA season. Feet can be not that big of a problem. Although her events, I'm not a doctor, but thinking through the backstroke kick and the flexion of the foot, that seems like something that puts a lot of stress on a foot. Breaststroke puts a lot of stress on a foot. So I don't know, without knowing exactly how severe it is, it's hard to know how to handicap that injury. I always thought the 200 IM was her best shot. Personally, to me, this would be enough to move her to 3rd or 4th in either backstroke event. I still think she probably has a shot in the 200 IM just because she looked really good in that race. So I don't know. It's hard to say. Like Coleman said, it's not a good field to go into injured. This is the backstrokes especially are not a good place to go into injured. But I guess we'll see. What order does she swim in? Do you guys know what order those races come in?
I think it's 100 back, 200 IM, 200 back. Thinking from Maya Dorado's Olympics.
Yeah.
I know it was 2 IM, then 200 back. And I think the 100 back is like earlier in the schedule.
I think I could see a scenario where she drops the 100 back maybe. I mean, I know that's where she was the world record holder, but it does seems like her focus has maybe shifted a little to the 200s in the last few years. I don't know, maybe I'm making that up. That's just kind of how it's felt. So I could, I think if the 200 back was her first race, maybe she would probably drop it as a last race. It's sort of a flyer, and whatever happens, but.
That's a good point. I was just going to ask that if we'd see, because we've seen it with some illnesses before. I remember when I think Easton was sick, and maybe when Ledecky was sick, and they'll kind of pare down their lineup and just focus on one thing. Looking at it, 100 back final, 200 IM semifinal are the same night. So I think that's probably right on that. Yeah, depending on where she's at, 100 back might be a scratch, and then just focus in on the IM.
Yeah, try to make the team in that, and then hope for the best in the 200 back.
Makes sense.
I mean, we saw the diver Steele Johnson has a foot injury, and he was, I don't know if you guys caught this story, Olympic silver medalist, and he pulled out, he dove the first round of platform and then had to pull out of it. And I know the strain of diving off a platform is different than the strain of diving off a block, but it's also the kind of injury that she probably hasn't been doing much starting, I would assume. Just to preserve the foot, and you don't know if she dives in and smacks it funny, and all of a sudden she's got to change her plan, or he had to pull out of the Olympic diving trials midway through the meet, and he was wearing flip flops up onto the platform and throwing them down because his foot was in that much pain. And it doesn't. I don't get the impression that her injury is as severe as his, but you never know. There's impact, and you hit a turn wrong, you hit something wrong, and the plan could change.
So going into every trials, we have stories like this. We have surprises that we obviously don't see coming. They probably don't see coming either. Any surprises that you can predict now, either swimmers that might break out or events that might not go the way that our commenters, fans, or even we think they will?
Jared, you go while I think of one.
Okay. Well, when I was thinking about this, we talked about some of the young names that people are really excited about. It doesn't seem that long ago that everyone was really, really hyped on Gretchen Walsh as kind of the next American sprinter on the women's side. And for whatever reason, it just feels like all of a sudden people were on board with Kurtzen and Husky were swimming so well. And we've kind of forgotten about Gretchen Walsh. A lot of people would still have her maybe making the 400 free relay, something like that. But she feels like a swimmer, double world junior champ in 2019. And, we haven't really seen her swim a whole lot since then because of the pandemic and any big international, national type meets. But feels like someone that could blow up and maybe be an individual 50 free, 100 free. I know she's got some other good strokes, but sprint freestyles, I'd be keeping an eye on her. I really think she could surprise us in a way where we look back and say, why did we not see that coming?
So Jared, hot take right now. How many Walsh sisters make the Olympic team?
Oh man. I'll go one. If I don't, do you have to pick which one?
No, you just have to pick a number.
Oh, yeah, one.
Very, very safe.
That is safe. Yeah, I would set the line at 1.5.
Yeah.
That's hard. You asked Jared, right? So I don't have to answer.
No, Coleman, hot take. How many Walsh sisters make the Olympic team?
Hot take. I'm going to say both because I think Gretchen has the best chance in the relay. Mm-hmm. I think if Gretchen makes it, then Alex is going to be like, well, I need to make it now. And her better events come later in the meet.
So if Gretchen makes the relay, does that mean Kurtzen or Husky is out?
I mean,
it's hard to see all three of those in.
Hold on. Let me see if I can pull up the women's free.
Cheater.
Why am I cheating? No, I don't think that means if Gretchen makes it, I don't think that means that either of those is necessarily out.
So then that means you think Mallory is out. Sorry, guys. Mel isn't on the podcast. We can't pick 14 women.
Okay, in the relay, I could see Simone, Mallory, Abby, Tori, Claire, Gretchen. I think that's a pretty good top six. That's
Who's next?
6 of the top 7. Erica Brown is seated at 4th, but I think that's a very plausible 6 women to make. And plus, Tori or Claire can make it in the 100 fly, I think, pretty easily and not make the relay as well.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm looking for a surprise is I think the winner of the 200 breast will go 219 low. 219 low. I think everybody forgot that those 200 breast women were on a collision course, that was supposed to be the coolest race, and Lily King is not a great, or hasn't had great results in the 200 and long course. So I think people just kind of, I don't know that people get super excited about that race. And, nobody's really coming close to the world record the last few years. It feels like one of those races that nobody's really excited about. But I think between King and Escobedo and who's the other one?
Laser, Annie.
Annie Laser. I think between the 3 of them, I think whoever wins that is going to go a 219 low.
Low? Man, that is a hot take. That is a hot take. But I mean, I could definitely see 219 for the winner. I think that is pretty plausible and pretty fair. Yeah. Jared, any thoughts on that women's 200 breast?
Men's 200 breast was really fast last time around. I remember that. So kind of could see it. That feels like another one to me that they should be pacing themselves, and I wouldn't expect them to go that fast. But for whatever reason, they seem to go fast in that race at trials, and they probably have to when there's 3 of them like that. And whatever young kid jumps up, or somebody will have a big swim.
I am not excited about the men's 200 breast. I don't know why, but nothing in that. The 100 breast will be interesting. Nothing in that men's 200 breast really makes me excited. I hope one of them does something that excites me. But going into the meet, it's just it doesn't feel like any of them are going to get 10 for a medal. So it's kind of like,
yeah. I mean, honestly, I think we could see 208 make the team.
Mm-hmm.
Last year it was like 207. But no, I'm sorry, 208 low, I think, was second. But yeah, it's like that's not a 208 is yeah, you're right. That's like 7th or 8th in the final of the Olympics, I think.
It's amazing how quickly 208 low went from an amazing time to out of the final at the Olympics.
We've got 2.5 minutes left. So I think on the men's side for breaststroke, my hot take is that four people will make the team in breaststroke.
Yeah, I think Nick Fink probably has the best chance of doubling, but Andrew Wilson probably takes the other spot next to Michael Andrew in the 100 breast. I think you got to say Michael Andrew's the favorite after that 58 mid he popped. I know, again, everybody loves to hate on Michael Andrew, but 58 mid, nobody, Kevin Cordes isn't going 58 mid again, and who else has shown that they can do that? Cody hasn't raced in a year and a half.
Cody just put out a vlog, and he's very confident. And he's been doing a lot of 200 work. He's said he's been doing the best training of his life, and I'm on board. I'm on the Cody. I think he makes it in the 100. And then
does 200 work help him make the team in the 100?
I think he's always had a strong back half, so I think so.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'll be curious to see.
Those are different races now. Jared knows that. Jared, tell us about breaststroke. Jared, teach us how to swim breaststroke.
Well,
Jared was an All-American breaststroker.
Well, and I love the 100 breast, but yes, the 200 breast is a completely different stroke, and it doesn't count. So there's. I'm curious though. The breaststrokes, I feel like we had a couple guys pop on the college level. We've not seen those guys get a good chance in long course just because of how weird last summer was. So Whitley and Reese Whitley and Max McHugh will be the two that I don't know what they can do. And so that's maybe why the 200 just feels so weird and hard to pick, because I don't know what those guys are going to wind up doing, but they'll be ones to keep an eye on for sure. Whitley, I think, especially in long course.
And where does Max McHugh go to college, Jared?
Oh, Max McHugh, he's he's a breaststroker, so he has to be at Minnesota. He has to.
Yeah.
That's all the time we have. We might cut off here soon, but thank you, Jared. Thank you, Braden, for your expertise and insight. Stay tuned on SwimSwam for full coverage of the 2021 Olympic Trials Wave 2, June 13th to 20th in Omaha, Nebraska. We'll see you there. You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.